Obviously, you can see there a bit of a logo of me. All I'm really doing there is, because I always promote myself. I don't bother promoting names of businesses because I see myself as one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
So Stephen Stanwick just being real is just that motto that I've sort of run by. In terms of critical thinking, I wrote an article some time ago about responsibility, and that we're responsible for everything we choose to do and choose not to do.
Sure.
And the fact that the majority of people, I think, in the world now, because they're not thinking through their things, they are choosing to not do, to not engage. And so the outcome they get, that we all get as a result of that, if they are the majority, is the outcome we have chosen to create. We've got to take responsibility for it. And so that's what I say, because the future will be of our creation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we choose to be passive and not engage in it, well, then what we get is what we're going to get. It may not be very pretty, but that was the involvement we chose to allow it to happen.
Yeah. The result of our net of the decisions we've made and not made, and where you are right now in life is as a result of those decisions.
Yeah. And when you take that back to Lifter, you know, that sort of says that if you're going to sit in the love seat, you've got to be prepared to take 100% responsibility for what you do and say in that seat, because we're going to critique you based on that, and we're going to help you through it based on that. Now, if it's a myth and a lie, well, it's probably not going to help you very much. But if you're owning it and you're responsible for it, you'll leave with actions to do. You'll leave with actions you want to take.
Well, and we find people leave very inspired and talk about uplifted, because they, in most cases, they're actually getting ideas from outside the box. Even our good friend Paul Maggiatis said, you know, there's a whole lot of ideas. They were simple, but I would not have thought of them. But they came from outside his box, outside his paradigm, and it's like, wow. And really, taking action on any one of them is powerful, let alone on the 5 or 10 or 20 that people end up getting. But so, because I said to you, when I first, my association with the concept of critical thinking was that what you were doing was you were being critical of the idea or the person and so I had a negative association with the word critical, as in, well, you're being a critic, you're criticizing me, and that's probably a shallow or thin-skinned ego worried about being criticized rather than well, hang on, this is someone looking at it from another angle with different data, which again comes back to your point to me around the different data. Is, well, what data are you using to form your opinion? And in a lot of cases, from a convenience point of view, from a lazy crocodile point of view, it's like, I don't need to get any more data, I've got enough. But in fact, they don't have enough.
Well, I quite often ask the question of people, is that, what have you gathered? Have you gathered information, or have you gathered evidence? And when you have gathered that information and evidence, have you gathered it with a unique bias that you're unaware of? Because I think a lot of people do the Google search and all they're doing is seeking information. And if the information's in their favour, then great, they'll take that and it's going to get used. But none of it's evidence, because they haven't looked at it as a form of evidence. They've just gone looking for supportive information. Yeah.
And of course, nowadays with Google and the algorithms, you end up getting more of what you've previously searched. So you're reinforcing your either conscious or most likely unconscious bias. You're in an echo chamber.
And of course, and you get your CEO businesses, you know, and they're all about keywords and getting the right search words into there and getting the right words into the information that you're propagating onto the internet. So, you know, those keywords, you can't decipher bias from those, but they're going to come up at the top of the search. That's not an immediate hierarchical evidence trail.
Yeah. It's a quite very biased based on keyword search. So the future's our own creation. So taking it to the next step with these other slides, tell me about this, talking about data input and data spread, data input spread. What do you mean by this?
So what I'm talking about here is that typically when we ask a question, we're asking, and I've used a few terms there, you know, God, guardians, good friends, guide, guides being, say, someone like yourself, you know, business or a life coach or something like that, or we're doing a search on Google. And we're collecting information which we are loosely calling evidence. Well, if you look at that pendulum, that there is a sort of a scaling. And you could look at that scaling in two different ways. You could say that that's left and right thinking. You could say it's good or bad. You could say it's socialism, capitalism, you know, whatever the extremes are, they could be any of those that we talk about. And we spend a lot of time debating out on those fringes. Oh, I dislike socialism. I'm absolutely a capitalist. Oh, no, I'm absolutely a socialist. I'm not a capitalist. But the real thinking stuff is happening right in the middle, because you're getting a combination of both of those ingredients, but you're having to do the work. You're having to go, okay, is that credible? Does it stand up? Is it valid? If I run it through a couple of other thinking processes, does it stand up, or is it only going to work in that area or that industry or that discussion? So it takes a bit to stay in the middle and to process both sides of the conversation and to come up with a personal researched opinion. Now, it's no coincidence that there's 13 of those rings in that pendulum.
Okay.
And there's 13 rings because about 13 times 7 is going to get you very close to 100%, or 13 times 8 is going to get you very close to 100%. And that, in my mind, I did some reading and I tried to find it. I still can't find it. There's a whole pile of stuff about the magic of 7. But I have seen it when I was raising money for the community banks, and I have seen it when I've been raising money for other events, that once you get about 7% of your audience on side, everything starts to go your way.
In terms of a tipping point.
It's sort of like a tipping point, yeah. And so, you know, my challenge is, in terms of thinking about critical thinking, is I think that if we could get 8% of the world to think critically all the time, we'd probably lift the bar of conversation, you know, immeasurably. We would probably lessen the swing of that pendulum enormously. And we would have such more robust and meaningful conversation going. So,
I mean, what you're reminding me of, literally last week I was coaching a fellow, and we use neuro-linguistic programming a lot, NLP, which really goes back in the 1960s, Bandler and Grinder, looking at what makes people, what are the things we learn about great communication, but also human excellence. Excellence in communication, excellence in performance. And one of the points they make is that all humans, when they take data in from the external world, they as soon as it goes in, a whole lot of things are going on processing wise, not the least of which we're deleting some of it, we're filtering it, we're deleting some of it, we're taking other parts and distorting it to fit our own reality, delete and distort. And there's a range of other filters that we edit it before we even start to process it. And I think part of what you're saying here is, with the critical thinking, is just stop the deletion and the generalizations. Another one. Oh, that's just like, you know, you're taking in data on, say, a budgerigar. Oh, that's just a bird like any other bird. Or that, you know, that's real estate. Oh, yeah, I know all about real estate. Oh, hang on, but this deal on that location at this point in time in this market. No, but I know all about. So we try to save us, coming back to the lazy crocodile, to save thinking, we generalize.
And we block it. We turn it into a big block, and it's not a big block. Yeah.
And so when it comes, let's say, to, let's just say, Lifter, when we're talking about marketing, we say, oh, the person's, I know all about websites. Well, hang on. If you take a look at your website, we can see you don't know all about websites. Oh, well, I've got a web developer. Well, if you may have a web developer, but it's actually not converting. Or, I do marketing. What do you do? I've got a guy that does search engine optimization. Coming back to that lazy crocodile, doing everything to go, I don't want to move. It's that unless there's a threat, or like literally as we had the other day in the meeting where Elliot from Locify literally had said to Nick, mate, you haven't done this, you're not doing this. Like he literally had to a certain extent, and we all were shocked at the same time, push the button, the fight or flight button. Oh my God, this is serious. I need to do something. Otherwise, the crocodile was only too happy to lay on the beach in the sun going, no, it's all under control. Well, if it's all under control, why are we getting fantastic traffic to your site and none of it's converting? Man, that is critical. You know, so let's go a step further here, because I remember when you first drew this, like if we say the blue is the side where a person is like blindly optimistic, that everything's okay, I don't need to do anything, and to a certain extent, and the red over the other side is almost blindly pessimistic. It's all crap. It's all, but somewhere in the middle is where's the data to show the best.
Yeah. Well, the favourite terms that are used to discriminate you if you start to throw up some of this sort of stuff is, I know, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Oh yeah.
You know, you're out here at the red. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're just a flat out nut. You shouldn't be listened to.
Right.
Right through to say the blue, which is, you know, you could say, well, I really don't like thinking that much, so I just do what everyone else does.
Yeah.
And I believe what everyone else believes. Yeah. And that's where I'm going to start, blindly following whatever they feed me.
Yeah.
And so this guy in the middle, and I say blue because I don't know whether that one out the side there, mate, is purple or blue, given I'm colourblind. But
okay.
But
well, it's blue. It's blue out there on the left-hand side, and it's red on the right-hand side, and it's purple in the middle.
Okay, well then the purple one is the guy who's, you know, the person who's putting in the effort to scrutinise that information. The conspiracy theorist isn't all wrong. The person following the trend and just doing what is thing are not all wrong. But nor is that person sitting in the middle. But he's probably got, or they have probably got, a higher chance of being in a better place because they're thinking through this all the time. Right.
Well, you're reminding me of Warren Buffett and his mate Charlie Munger, who are just, both of them are constantly searching a whole range of data. And, you know, their decisions are not based on, certainly not based on emotion. They're based on some very foundational skills, but not the least of which he's reading. As he said, he loves consuming data 6 and 7 hours a day of reading. Versus the person that goes reads one article, or even worse, sees one meme, one poster on an Instagram post and forms an opinion of that. You're also reminding me, one of my recent podcast interviews was with a fellow called Brendan O'Shannessy, a Perth guy, but he's a captain. He captains super yachts, 100-meter yachts.
I watched that one.
Billionaires, and he talks about. I think it made me think of you around critical thinking. He said, you know, when they're checking weather, you don't just get weather from one source. You know, what's the weather going to be like in the Indian Ocean today, or what's the weather going to be like in the North Atlantic, or you actually get the weather data from 3 or 4 different places. And even then you go, I tend to trust it from such and such a source better because they actually take weather sources from a whole range of different places. So it's like, so coming right back to where are you getting your data from? And therefore you're literally, as you say, you're critically analyzing the source of your information. So a lot of people, you know, don't do that. So taking that a step further here, information versus evidence. And I do love that quote. The deepest sin against the human mind is to believe things without evidence. Wow. That's a slap over the head straight away, isn't it? That certainly shakes the sleeping crocodile on the beach. What do you mean? What do you mean? That really means I have to wake up. So tell us what you mean by the writing on this slide.
Well, basically, I'm basically speaking to that slot, to the deepest sin against human mind is to believe without evidence. I mean, I think if you did stop and critically analyse all of the information that's being fed to you, you would find yourself questioning a lot of things that you have previously followed. because you would then, when you did that, you would go, hang on, I can't find any evidence to support that. Why do I do that? Why have I done that for the last 10 years? What actually says to me it's good for me? I got told by, there are ones that come through in our lives, they're innocent, but they have a significant impact on us. Eat your crust or you won't get curly hair. I know that doesn't quite relate well to you, Lee, but
yeah. No, but that's just one thing that's thrown, particularly as a kid growing up.
Yep. But there's actually no evidence to support that. But there is a lot of information in terms of it being repeated to you by your mother or your father when you were younger because you wouldn't eat the crust on your bread.
Yeah. Well, I remember my mother, money doesn't grow on trees. Whereas a mate of mine who actually manages, put these syndicates together and has $1 billion worth of property under management. Well, I need more money. I just go and make it.
Yep.
Like they both of them are just sources of information, but in his case, he has evidence. I mean, that's the thing about NLP talks about whatever belief you have. It's like a tabletop. There's legs. There's evidence you've gathered over the years to support that belief. It doesn't mean it's a locked in concrete fact, but because my mate has plenty of evidence to go, well, I need more money. I've got evidence upon evidence upon evidence that this is what I do to go and make it. Whereas on my mother's side, it'd be, well, money doesn't grow on trees because I've got evidence and evidence and evidence to show that I can't make it.
Yeah.
So then it gets down to, where you get your evidence from, which I think, again, is one of the powers of Lifter, in that what we're doing in those rooms is we are gathering evidence from within our group and outside our group of this is how you grow your business, scale your business, lead a fun, free life. Coming back to say, one of our directors, James Sutherland, there he is, 130 staff, has a goal to go to 300, can take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks off. The business continues to run beautifully without him. And the same with Tim from Odyssey Tax Accounting, goes away fishing for 2 weeks. The business runs beautifully without him. He's built a business that gives him freedom.
Yeah.
As distinct from he's got a business that locks him with handcuffs that he can't get out of. And so we want to be helping people. And what we do is provide the evidence and the systems and the support. And to a certain extent, what they need to do is challenge, critically analyze their own thinking around what is it that's holding me in place right now. Would you agree with that? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, no, I would agree. And, that gets back to what we're talking about here is just scrutinize what you are using to support your thoughts. And if it's information, then you better get a lot deeper than just information. If it's evidence, then you better probably start looking at that evidence and making sure you're critical of it, that you're making sure it's living up to what it says it is. If it's evidence, it should be able to stand up. If it doesn't stand up, then it's not evidence, it's now information.
Yeah, and it reminds me, FEAR, false evidence appearing real. The fear, because as you know, I spend time, a number of the members I coach, particularly the people that have the small businesses. And sometimes when you hear people, the stories they tell themselves, it reminds me, Henry Ford says, whether you think you're going to win or lose doesn't matter. Either way, you're right. The limiting stories we tell her, oh, I can't do that because, or I'm not good enough at that because, and you go, well, you keep telling yourself that is not evidence, although you can probably find evidence to support it. That's just information. Let me give you some other information, to the point where I just love that saying, and I've used it a number of times now, is, I do like shopping, but I'm not buying your bullshit.
Yeah.
because if I buy into your bullshit, now we both believe your bullshit, particularly with limiting, disempowering bullshit. Oh, I can't do that. It's almost like the first, as soon as you hear people go, I can't do that because, you go, really? Now that's just the time to be willing to do critical thinking on your FEAR, false evidence that appears real. So as you say, are you checking it, or are you just blindly believing your own bullshit, or blindly believing the information that you've allowed to go on and on in your head.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't quite know where this one comes from as well, but if you two people always agree, one of them's a fool.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And coming back to being real and our values is, are we trusting enough where I can actually challenge you on your thinking? I challenge you on those stories you're telling yourself. I think of the great rugby league coach, Wayne Bennett, and he said he modeled himself on one of his old teachers at school who said, I only challenge you because I care about you.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm challenging your self-limiting beliefs because I care about you. I didn't care about you. I'll let you go on with your own bullshit as long as you like.
Yeah, got no skin off my nose.
But if we're serious as we are in Lifter at connecting you with the possibilities of your future, then we will, through our Lifter thinking systems, because clearly part of the thinking system at times is brainstorming and generating ideas, and other times it's going to be challenging your sources of data. So it's a combination of those factors, not the least of which is that thinking outside the box. Like that's again when you got 20 people's brains all focused on your business coming, there's no doubt half of them are going to come from outside your box.
Yeah.
Which is what you want. So here, tell me about this. Reasoning is to first understand logic. Tell us about that.
So we think the saying is, and we hear it a lot, oh well, that's logical. Oh yeah, that's illogical. And how do we make that determination? It's actually it's almost a subjective measure, because your logic and my logic are quite different. What I think is logical to happen, you might think is illogical to happen.
Yeah.
And so what is making the differences in that? Well, that comes back to the person making that statement. You know, what is your bias? What are the stereotypical things that you believe and cast upon all of your thoughts? What are the prejudices that you have, that you are unconscious that you have? What discriminatory lifestyle do you have?
Yeah, your conditioning. You don't even know where your discriminations come from. You come from mum, dad, the footy coach, your priest, your teacher, your auntie, the hippie commune you grew up in. You know, but as you say, unconscious biases that we get immersed in.
Yeah. Well, so logic is almost illogical. You know, the logic is different to everybody there because of all of those biases that are in play. And if you don't understand those biases, then, or even understand that you have them, then your logic's not going to be quite right.
Yeah.
And
well,
so,
your logic is only going to be based. Logic, what's logical for one person, like what's logical for you versus what's logical for Albert Einstein, could be two completely different things.
Absolutely.
What we're often doing is we're labeling it as not logical because we actually don't understand it. Whereas someone says, well, hang on, there's 3 other steps in there that you're not even aware of. So you're not even qualified to say, is it logical or not? You know, we're going to transplant a heart and a lung today. What? That's not, well, if you don't know how to transplant a heart and lung, of course it's not logical. But if you've spent 30 years training and following, you know, from Christian Barnard onwards, like my mate Rob Labiesta, then it's a set of skills. It's logical for him. It's obviously the logic to him, magic to us, or impossible to others, depending on what your point of view is at any point in time. So in many ways, it's a judgment, which, by the way, reminds me of one of my meditations the other day. I realized a person I know, I said, he lives in the tree of judgment. He sits up in this tree overlooking everyone else, judging everybody else, like he's the genius and knows all. In my head, I went, get down from the tree into the garden of kindness and compassion, because the further up the tree you are, the more detached you are. I'm smarter than the rest, I'm clever than the rest, you're all losers down there, look at me up here. It's like, man, you're a problem. And so his logic in that tree is completely different than the logic of
absolutely.
The Buddhist monk over at the Buddhist center talking kindness and compassion. It really is paradigm. what's my paradigm, what's my conditioning. At the end of the day, coming back to Lifter, the paradigm being willing to literally being, and I think you've put it on one of these others around the unexamined life is not worth living, taking responsibility to examine your own thinking. And that's certainly part of the journey in Lifter is let's examine your thinking, because there's a great piece of thinking, by the way, which says the thinking that got you to here won't get you to there.
Yeah. Yep. It's a good line. That one, I like that.
You know, so like in our Lifter meetings, we've got people who are running businesses, and they call them businesses, but it's just them earning an income. But if they want to go from where they are to, let's just say, the James Sutherland world of 100 people on their team, even James, to go from where he is at 130 staff to where he wants to be with 300 and offices all around, not only Australia, around the world, his thinking will go again. So it's like the unexamined life, the unexamined thinking, being willing to go, okay, my thinking's got me to here. And in his case, he's done an MBA and he's been to conferences and he does a whole range of, but he's continuing to learn and grow. So tell us about this Stephen Novella one you've got there.
Well, just go back one there, Lee, and just because this is where I think Lifter's strength lies in that previous slide, if you can.
Previous slide.
So when you come to Lifter and you've come and you're in the right frame of mind, you're open, you're prepared to be vulnerable, sitting in the seat, and the people in the meeting are going to offer their feedback politely and diplomatically and so on, but with a bit of reality, a bit of adventure, a bit of spirit. You're going to feel the pinch if there's something not quite right in that process. And this is what is happening in the room. We're analysing it, we're inferring, we're evaluating, we're interpreting it, we're generating a thought from it, and we're putting it out there with reason. And you then do that all over again. So if you sit in the seat, you get yourself 10, 15, 20 people that are on your side trying to help. But they're also going to reanalyze you and re-infer and re-evaluate and reinterpret at the end of that meeting. And there'll be a different expectation of you at the next meeting, at the next time you report. And you sit in the seat again in 12 months' time, there's another evaluation going on and another evolvement going on. And if you can do that constantly, which is what critical thinking is, and understand your biases, well, crikey, we're doing a lot of good. We're doing a lot of good for the person in the seat, the people in the membership, because they are all lifting the bar, meeting by meeting by meeting.
Yes. And you know the big A in the Lifter logo is between acceleration and action, and as you say, accountability. It really is about evolving, which is, as you say, Lifter is the Swedish word for lift, to raise. And we want to help the person lift and raise their business and lift and raise their life, because we say the business should be a vehicle to help you lift your life to where you want your life to be evolving to. That's what we say, Lifter beyond business. It's not just about business, it's about you, your life, and your freedom. It's as we say, it's like a hothouse. It's an ecosystem of fertilizing of ideas and support to implement those ideas. We actually want those ideas to take root and grow, and we want to be doing this in every postcode around the world, not just in Perth, Western Australia, but around the world, so that it's an active, supportive ecosystem. Doing great work all around the world. So,
and in the end, that achieves my goal, and that is to have more than 8% of the world critically thinking.
Yes.
And so, for me, I want to be on board and helping everywhere I can, because it's going to achieve that goal, and I think that's going to do something magnificent for mankind.
Right, brilliant, mate. Well, as you say, I like George Clayton's quote: "Our prosperity as a nation is determined by our individual prosperity." And when we're helping each other be prosperous, then, it reminds me, years ago, a fellow told me about like a story of the difference between heaven and hell, and go through one door, and here's a whole pile of people with big spoons and forks on their arms, and they're all trying to feed themselves at this banquet. And as they try and feed themselves, they're slapping food all over the wall because they can't get the food in their mouth because the forks and the spoons are too big. They're too big, and they're just making a shocking mess. And in the middle, they're just wasting away. And if they weren't already dead, they'd be starving to death. So that's hell. And you should keep. Well, I'm going to keep walking. I want to go through the next door. As he goes through to heaven, he sees the people same forks and spoons on the arm, but they're feeding each other. And in many ways, that's what we're doing at Lifter, is we want to be feeding each other with ideas, but at the same time, we're feeding each other with what you've said here, challenging opinions, challenging data sources, challenging viewpoints, because it's not just intellectual. It's actually also converting intention and intellect into action, but we're feeding each other, which again comes back to that generosity and receiving. And as you say, it's our responsibility to critically examine the data and the people and the intention. Tell us about that. Read that for me and what it means for you.
Yeah, look, so it's our responsibility to critically examine the data and the people's intentions and views, or the future we create will be less than we want, potentially awful, but completely of our own doing. And basically all I'm saying there is to lead on from the top. The well-known quote that Socrates said was, "The unexamined life's not worth living." Well, he's basically saying examine yourself. If you're examining yourself, you'll be examining everybody the same way. Stephen Naval he's a lecturer from, I can't remember what university. He's got a magnificent book called Your Deceptive Mind. And it's effectively about those biases, where he's saying, hey, we fool ourselves into believing this, but if you pull out the biases, that's exactly not what is happening. And so he went on from Socrates to say the unexamined thought is not worth thinking. Stop and think about what it is that you're thinking. Is that really good for you? Because if it's not good for you, stop thinking it. If it's wrong, stop thinking it. If it's biased and discriminatory and whatever else you might be, stop thinking it. Wouldn't we all improve a lot more if we stopped thinking about that stuff that's of no value or not good for us?
Well, I think it comes back into what we're talking about when we're talking about Lifter thinking systems. It's literally systems to think about your own thinking. Because coming back to one of my mentors, Sadhguru, the Indian yogic, or that the yogics